Welcome back to All Beer Inside. Joining me today during the quarantine episodes, I have Ashley, also known as Pourinperspective on Instagram.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. As we usually do on the show, we have a beer with our virtual guests. Let me know what you're having tonight.
Yeah, I'm having this Berliner Melon Weisse from Dunham. I just picked it up at Bobian, which is about a 1-minute walk from my house. It's just down the corner. And it's 3.9%. I've never had it, so I'm taking a gamble. What
Is
about
that
you?
the dragon one or is that the other one?
No, the melon one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a fan of the dragon one. I like that. I'm having from Riverbend in Alma, Quebec. The light's not great, but the Scotch maple or Scotch ale with maple.
Very cool.
So as I say on the show, instead of toast, it's a toast. Cling.
Okay.
I need a little bell or something, or like a fake sound effect to kick
maybe
in.
a gong or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Very
So what's your story? What got you into craft beer and in turn beer Instagram?
Yeah, so I'm from BC, originally the Okanagan, and moved to Nanaimo when I was in my teens and grew up there. I lived off and on in Columbus, Ohio when I was in my, 19 to like 22. And so I would stay there in the summers and anytime I had off from school, basically. I lived in this area called the Short North, which has the most breweries per square capita, more or less. So I had a bike, and I would, bike down the street, and you would hit probably like 5 breweries within, a 5-minute bike. There were Seven Suns, an elevator, and there's quite a bit. So that was sort of how I got introduced. Through being there. And when I left and I wasn't planning to go back, I came back to BC and I kind of realized that there was a lot around me that I'd never really seen before. I was obviously in college and craft beer wasn't the thing that college kids really turn to. So I started discovering what was near me. My friends opened up White Sales Brewing in Nanaimo, so we would spend most of our days there and just sort of hang out. It was very casual. I wouldn't really call it craft. It was borderline craft, I guess. And
so
since then they've
macro kind of.
Yeah, sort of. I guess they just never really followed the trends, is how I would put it. The West Coast, especially Vancouver Island, was falling behind a lot. Of course, in Vancouver, you have places like Superflux and you have Twin Sails and Strathcona, which are fairly well known-ish. So then we started getting a lot of imports from Vancouver, and that was very neat. So that was sort of my introduction to it. And then I moved to Montreal for my master's degree at McGill. And I think it was official Mr. Crafty, Anthony, who reached out to me. He used to comment on my posts and he said, wait till you come to Montreal. Quebec is the best beer scene in all of Canada. And I arrived and I looked around and I said, okay, where? I couldn't find it. It wasn't really very prevalent for somebody that didn't know about depanneurs. That's not really a thing in BC. So I had no idea what a depanneur was nor a beer specialty store. And I was living in the West Island, and then I moved back into the city, and I lived right next to Experience Bière, and I used to go there quite a bit. And that was sort of my primary introduction, I guess, to the Quebec scene. So very grateful for them. And I'd say Pub Brewski was probably the first bar I ever really stepped foot in.
Yeah, that is the big convenience we have in Quebec versus the rest of Canada, I find, is the beer store.
Mm-hmm.
Not the beer store like Ontario, but the local craft beer store, which Ontario is getting better. I know the grocery stores are starting to have a craft scene, but they're nowhere near like the IGAs are here in Quebec.
No, it's very slow and gradual. Even BC, it was illegal up until recently. So of course you have the big liquor stores, but then you have to sort of know which one is carrying which, and they never really had a big Instagram presence or Facebook presence. Quebec is all about Facebook, and they put up their releases for what they get in, and so that was pretty nice to have that access. So
yeah, I do find it is very helpful, but at the same time we need more unification of rules across Canada for booze. But like you said, per capita in Columbus, which sounds fantastic. 5-minute bike ride, I hit 5 breweries. Vermont's the same, 10-minute bike ride, 5 breweries. It's amazing. So Columbus is on my list of places to visit, especially the Brewdog Hotel.
Yeah, yeah. And Hoof Hearted was one that we lived very close to as well. And it's funny, we used to make fun of Hoof Hearted because we thought that their beers weren't very good, and now they've just like really taken off. And so, yeah, now I have regrets.
Well, yeah, the FOMO's a thing, unfortunately, for a lot of people, and you just gotta take a shot in the dark. It was how my craft beer basically started. Was I was working next to where the Mondial started, and I'm just like, hey, let's try all these weird beers. Oh my god, beer has flavor. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. The name Pour in Perspective. Where'd you come up with that?
So I actually had two different usernames before it. So because I was an English major and I mostly was drinking and writing my thesis, I was writing a thesis about these alcoholic writers. And so I wanted to get into character, and I wasn't an alcoholic, but of course I was drinking to get into the spirit. And so I called myself BC Beers and Books, I believe. And so I kept that for a while, moved to Montreal, and I did my master's in English Lit, not on the same generation of writers, but it carried over. So I called myself MTL Beers and Books up until, oh gosh, I guess it was October maybe. And then Pour in Perspective sort of came from I think I just kind of was sick of seeing the same repetitive photo of, a can with the beer behind it. I was doing it for a long time, and I just found like it was very stagnant, and I felt like it didn't really show the side of craft beer that people want to see, nor the most important part of craft beer. Obviously, the final product is important to an extent, but I think that there's a lot that we miss in the sense of kind of seeing the action that goes into it. People drink beer, but people make beer, and that's kind of the most important part for me. So yeah, Pour in Perspective sort of just came from, I think, just not even just like the beer, but just seeing like the other sides of the beer community and the beer industry. I think as I've gotten further on is more my objective.
Yeah, your photos are very well lit and bright, I find, a lot of the times. And there's almost like semi-action photos in some of them where like one of the most recent ones is where you're still pouring the beer in and you're taking the picture. Where does that kind of inspiration come from?
Yeah, so I would say not from anyone in the area. I would say that I've been fortunate enough to meet Melissa and Eric. So her name is Beauty of the Beer, and he's his barrel-aged beer. I met them in Connecticut in February. I've been talking to them for a while. She's definitely my biggest inspiration. She just has, gorgeous eye, I think, for the light and the way that something works. And she also does a lot of behind the scenes. And the other one is Julie, Craft Beer Deer. She's probably one of the most famous, I guess, Instagrammers out there. And she's a professional photographer. And I take a lot of inspiration from the way that she plays with light and space. I think, yeah, it's very versatile. So those are probably my top two. Yeah.
Yeah, you also got nice little write-ups with each one too. So you can see right there, like you said, Masters in English. What made you decide McGill over any other university, like in Canada, like McMaster's or anything like that?
I got into the top three. I got into UBC, U of T, and McGill. My mom lives in Vancouver, and I stayed home for my family more or less. It was kind of they wanted me there, and I didn't really want to be there, but it just made sense. My dad lives in just outside of Toronto, so I was thinking about it, but I felt like it was time for me to sort of get away and be on my own and kind of discover life. And I wanted to really throw myself into a really uncomfortable situation. So I really didn't know a lot of French in high school. In BC, you learn French, obviously, but no one really takes it seriously because you don't think you're ever going to use it. And I think my exact words were like, why am I learning French? I'm never going to use it. And then I ended up moving to Quebec. So yeah, so McGill was just highly appealing because it was far away from everybody. It was completely new, and it was going to be a difficult situation. I knew nobody here. I have no family here. And yeah, it was the best decision I ever made. And I don't know about McGill in general, but I think that my Montreal experience has been the most enriching. And I definitely consider Montreal home now. I don't see myself anywhere else at the moment.
Yeah, we are quite the diverse city, which is very nice. I always try to embrace the diversity of people, let alone the beer I'm drinking, which is great. And you can always taste the diversity that's out there in the craft beer industry. It has, like you said, maybe been a little slower to grow than you expected, but it is It was coming into fruition. I know there was more breweries planned. Those are all on hold, unfortunately, at this time. But we'll see what the next year brings us for most of these guys. I'm really hoping all of them survive and all of them are prosperous. I know some are hurting without having a tap room, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
I got, I become good friends with Troy and Drew from La Brasserie Kanawaki. I know those guys are hurting, but we just got to support them while we can. So.
Yeah, I know Troy is really hoping to push for Quebec beer delivery. This is the one thing that we don't really have. I know Troy quite well. And, in some ways it sometimes can water down the brand a little bit, having that much accessibility. And because we do have such wide distribution to depanneurs, there's almost not really a need, but I do understand, because I just placed 2 orders from Half Hours on Earth recently, just because I was kind of lacking a certain something in Quebec. I find, you can only have so much of the same places, and it's nice to be able to expand, and not being able to travel is hard. So it would be nice if Quebec could do some more interprovincial shipping. I think not just within the province, but elsewhere, because I think people are scared to come to Quebec for A, the language.
Yes.
In the US, people are very scared about that. And B, they don't really know anything about the breweries because they've never had access to them. They know, like Dunham, because it's such a classic, or De Ciel.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, they're not as familiar. Messorem is for sure getting up there. But even still, we need to be able to transport it elsewhere, and let people in too would be very nice.
Yeah, I've constantly, ever since I've kind of gotten into craft beer, I've been a proponent of why can't I get a beer from BC? And I understand that there is language laws, but hey, just put a sticker on your can. That's the way I look at it.
Exactly, just slap it right on the front.
Yeah, I'd spoken with. I was speaking with Mark from Stray Dog Brewing, and he said it would be easier for him to ship to Gatineau than it is for him to actually ship to Toronto.
Wow.
So.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of sucks, but it's there. So mentioning Troy, he's the one who introduced me to the guys you kind of are working for, but it's a weird situation, like you mentioned before the show. But Wood Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like that scene? I know you spoke with Natasha, and I forgot the other person you had mentioned.
Yeah, so it's Natasha and Mark that primarily own it, but it's basically it's owned by 4 people that have shares in it. So it's Natasha and Mark, and it's on their property. So it was Mark's dad's property, as I believe, and it was passed on to him. It's a large acreage. I think there's 55 acres that they have. So it houses his separate business, which is White Pine Lumber, which is what Natasha and Mark also work together on. So they're working together all the time. And then it's also Dan and Louis, the 2 brewers that have a share in it as well. So it's kind of co-owned between the 4 of them, more or less. So like I mentioned before, I was brought on fairly recently in March. And since then, it's really grown into a almost full-time job. I'm sure Mark will see this and he'll have a comment about it. But he's trying to get me to work full-time for it, but I have a job right now. And until we really get to the expansion that we hope to, it's not feasible. So, but I really love it. So I do mostly all the comms work. So I do the social media. So I do all the photos and the write-ups and the translations. I hope they're correct. And I do our website. So we have a bottle shop right now, like a merch site bottle shop that we do. So we're going to be doing a release. It's obviously this might air later, but on Friday. So we just announced that recently. So that will be going up Friday, and I'll be going to Wood Brothers on Friday to do inventory. So basically, I put the website live. We do counts, we do inventory together, sort of as a whole. I'll do a couple product pictures when I'm there, a couple action shots, just to sort of get some content. And then, we basically fulfill the orders. Natasha and I will go in the back in the cold room, and we'll prep everything. And hopefully this time I make no mistakes. And and it's been really a learning process. I do enjoy not just sort of like the social side of things, in the sense of taking photos and, write-ups and whatnot, because it can get a little repetitive, but seeing also the business aspect as well, seeing like the real strain that goes on behind closed doors, and all the financial parts of it. So we're doing that. And I also have been tasked with helping develop the labels for our cans. So we have a canning line that should be coming in 2 months. And so we're currently in development of labels. We've been back and forth for quite a while. So when I go, again, this will be aired later, when I go on Friday, we will be probably deciding on a final label and tweaking it a little bit and setting it off for print. And yeah, so that's sort of the trajectory, I guess. We have a large expansion going on right now as well. So we have 2 on the side. So we have the original tap room with the brew house in the back. And we have 1 expansion in the back, which will house some new fermenters and new bright tanks. And then probably the canning line will go back there too, and maybe some storage. And then the other one on the front is going to be sort of like an open air sort of terrace. And we'll have like a large garage door. And so people that have been coming to pick up beer for the releases, they love seeing the quick progression, because Mark does house his business there that deals with lumber. We have a pretty good access to the materials. So it's been fairly quick, and their sons help as well to build. So it's kind of just like a family affair, I would say. Everyone sort of pitches in, and yeah, so it's been a very, very interesting experience.
And the beers are just as popular as Masorum from what I'm seeing, and Masorum is a hop, skip, and a jump from my house. So
yeah, we are very close friends with Masorum. I am personally close friends with my friend Gabrielle Olivier, one of the brewers there. But we, as a brewery, we're very close with them. Louis is often stopping by to hang out. He loves them. We joke around that he's going to leave us to go to Masorum. It will never happen. But no, so we've already done a collab together. We did it. So that was one of the first sort of shoots that I guess I had done. So I did, this was prior to me working there. Mark said, like, you take good pictures. Can you go shoot some photos for our collab? I said, sure, why not? That sounds awesome. And so I got to meet all the guys, Marc-André and Vincent. And yeah, we just had a blast, and we sort of formed a relationship from there. So hopefully we can maybe do a collab in the near future. I know they're very busy, and we're very busy, and with the COVID restrictions, and we all sort of have full-time jobs at Wood Brothers. So this is just our fun side gig, we like to joke. But eventually when it grows, like you said, when it's growing at that pace, someone's going to have to step up and take the lead on potentially taking it on full time. And so we'll see what the future holds. I do know it's very popular, and people will come and say it's the hill farm of Canada, and we're very humbled by that. We don't see that. I definitely see it in the land, for sure. But we have a lot of work to do before we get to that level.
Hill Farmstead's an entire other beast. I don't know if you've ever been, but oh my God.
I've been 3 times, I guess.
Yeah, it just like waiting an hour to drink a beer and then waiting an hour to buy beer to leave with. I'm like, this is great for them, but not for me, because I'm alone. I want to just get all this stuff done. Or at least as Wood Brothers, I had to wait 15 minutes for a big pile of people to pass, which was still, it was like dead of winter and there was much snow on the ground. Not as many people are going to be going out, especially in Canada with the amount of snow we get sometimes. So
yeah, exactly.
So you basically collab in a sense with Wood Brothers by joining the team, and you collabed with Masorum. Are there any other ones in the future that you could think of across Quebec or Ontario? I know you can't really speak for Natasha and Louis and them, but any ones you would personally like to be involved with?
So I've in terms of my collabs, I guess I would consider myself more as I like to capture the work that's being done. So I've already done Pub Brewski. I actually reached out to Guillaume directly and asked if I could, they were canning some of their first beers. I think it was the Brew Juice Tropical, actually. So I got to meet the guys from Vessel Packaging, and they were really sweet. We just spent the day doing it, and I got to see all the disasters, like the CO2 tanks kind of failing out, and like all these things that people don't really realize, and then they wonder, the beer's not ready yet, like the release was supposed to be ready at 4 p.m. Why is it not ready? Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't realize, like you have to weigh every single can. You have to, something goes wrong, the lids aren't going on properly, it's not sealing, like you have a jam, and then you have to stop it and check it. And so there's those kind of minuscule things like that I like to kind of make people aware of, or at least I hope that I can in my photos. But in terms of collabs, I do hope that eventually that more Quebec breweries would be more willing to open their doors to people to see or to take pictures. Like Ericana is one that I would love to take some photos of. because I just moved and I live not that far from them, and it's a beautiful space. Yeah, I don't like to insert myself too much. I kind of, if it comes, it comes. But I will always avoid the influencer title. Gab will make fun of me for that, but I don't like to call myself that at all. I just like to just be present in the moment.
Yeah, we when I started this, I never expected things to take off the way they did. It's the same way, and myself and Phil, my video guy, are invited to all these events, and we're like, wait a minute, this is not what we were expecting at all. We just kind of wanted to sit around and drink some beer and give money because we're supposed to. And they're like, here, try this new beer here, and we're like, okay, who do we give money to?
Yeah, exactly.
This is you tasting our beer. No, wait, this doesn't work for me. And I'll never ever look at a gift horse in the mouth anyway. And I appreciate every single brewer, influencer, whoever we get together, whoever I grab a beer with. I grabbed a beer with Beer Brit. He spotted some pints. We've spotted some pints with him back and forth. So it's really fun to be part of this community. And like you said, there are some excessive beer snobs that can really kind of cut down on their negative attitude they have.
Yeah.
Where you have to understand, like, this is these guys' jobs. They're looking for perfection and quality control so that you don't go on some website later and crap on them because you had something underfilled by a millimeter. So
100%, yeah.
Do you brew yourself?
I have not, but actually I have plans to do a little home brew. We're going to do a wild fermentation, I think. So it's going to probably be about a year. We'll see if it holds up in my house or not. I'm collabing with a friend that works at a brewery, but it's not going to be for that brewery. But I know maybe Mark has mentioned about maybe learning how to brew at Wood Brothers. But yeah, I don't know if I'm there just yet. I would actually love to learn how to blend before I learned how to brew. I think it takes a lot of patience and it's very artful. I know brewing is also an art, but there's more of a precision, I think, that goes in it, whereas blending can be very spontaneous and you don't always know what the outcome is going to be. So that's something that I would love to learn how to do. So I hope in my near future that will be there.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. And I look forward to trying whatever beer you eventually collaborate on. So,
hopefully good.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Even if it's bad, it's always that first one. Plus, if you know it's bad, then you're not going to be serving it to other people unless you.
Yeah, it'll be like a fun drain pour,
Yeah. Unless you're like, okay, tell me what could make this better.
Exactly. I think, yeah, being able to take criticism is very important in this industry, and as is any industry, honestly. But I think sometimes people can get very sensitive about their beers, and they put up a real front about, like, my beer is the best, and I don't need to change anything because everything's great. When it's good to be able to take criticism sometimes and hear your customers. That's one of the things that I love about Brasserie, is that they heard the community in Quebec. Like, besides Bud Canada, there was really nobody around, and especially in Montreal, there's nobody doing the hazy IPAs and the smoothies and big stouts, which came later. So like, I really listened to their customers, and they heard a demand, and they just fulfilled it, like they just straight up just laid it all out there, and now they are the hot gods of Quebec, more or less, and it's well done for them, because that's what we need. We need for people to actually listen and not get stuck in the traditional roots. I think is that Quebec is very heavy on their traditional styles. They're Belgians, they're lagers, and they need to learn that, it's okay to do that, do it well, but also, you can switch it up once in a while, and you can play around.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Montreal being like one of the older cities out there, and there are a lot of traditionalists, but that's shifting. You could even see by the numbers from places like Molson and InBev losing customers to craft. Some of your favorite beers out there that you like to have and just sitting back in a night? Tonight's New England style night. This kind of night. Where do you kind of go for with your flavor profile?
Yeah, I usually gravitate towards an IPA. I try and stay away from calling it a New England IPA because in Quebec, people love to brand it a New England IPA, and they don't seem to know what a New England IPA really is. So there's no need to really call it that. But yeah, I usually have my fridge of Brasserie. I think I have some Gallicus in the fridge as well. But I like to sort of play around. So usually my fridge would be stocked with my haul from the US. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
But lately I've been turning towards Pilsners. I say to everybody that I meet, I say Pilsners are going to be the new IPA this summer. I do think that they're making a comeback. And after going to a couple places that really focused on how to do a good Pilsner, that was something that I fell in love with. So as much as I joke about, like people need to listen and they need to learn how to do an IPA, I do think a Pilsner is important, or a lager is nice to have some versatility as well. As long as it's done well, I think it's okay to, you can make everyone can make a really crappy Pilsner, I think, but it takes skill to really do one well. So yeah, usually in my fridge. So lately on these, really warm days, I think that's what I'm turning towards, something a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I'll always go with a lager during the summer. It's something crisp, clean, and I know the difficulty that these groups of guys and the gals have to go through, the brewers, to make a lager consistent. You're talking, what is it, an extra 6 weeks of just making sure that it sits and balanced. And even Steam Whistle, I mean, as big as they are now, they still make a consistent Pilsner. So
exactly.
Yeah. Any beers that you've heard of that you'd want to try, or any breweries, I should say?
Yeah, I would love to go to Jester King. That's one of my dreams. My friend Emma, Pup and Pint, actually, she's from Texas. I met her at Messerem on the patio. Daryl, who's a hippie hopness, I think, just walked up to her table, and she had her dog and said, can I sit here? And so we became really great friends, and he's just sort of intrusive like that, but in a good way. And so she's been to Jester King, and I just really love the way that they really care for the land. They really tend to it, and they use the land to their benefit. So I think that would be really fantastic. And I'd like to go up through the Catskills as well into New York, and probably do like a Mortalis and a Weaver Hollow, more of the spontaneous stuff as well. So yeah, that's something that I would like to do, and maybe go down even to the southern areas. Who knows? Honestly, I'm up for a road trip anytime, anywhere far.
One of my favorite, it wasn't the beer, but it was the atmosphere, it was Queen City Brewing. Okay. It's just like this large warehouse. The bathrooms are all old, hollowed out, like truck cabs, metal cabs. Wow. Cool. Yeah. The place is so big, it looks like you could hold a volleyball tournament in it.
Oh, wow. That's really-
And the pallets are basically old wood that was no good to support like structure. They just hollowed it out and made it to a flight. So
it's amazing when people can just like take any sort of material and turn it into something. I think there's one that just opened up in Vancouver too, called Container Brewing, and they literally took a shipping container and they used that as their bar tap room space. And I just thought, how cool. It's just so unique.
Yeah, I find the creativity between what you're brewing to what you're creating for the public to see in your image, it's all just kind of there together. So, and even like Instagram, I don't know any Instagrammers who have become super popular brewers. I don't think I personally follow enough people, but who knows what the future holds. This could just be the beginning of where your craft of Instagram and your words become something else. So
for sure.
Yeah. Beercations, previous ones, future ones, when it's safe to travel again?
Yeah, so the first beercation I ever did actually was so one of the things that I love the most about the Instagram community is, I think everyone will say it, is just the friends that you meet, like through it. I'm probably on the younger side. I'm 24 and I'm Anglo and I'm a girl, and that already puts me at a huge disadvantage when it comes to the beer scene. So I think it was pretty cool the way that we just sort of all met each other, and the very openness with which people, took you into their group. So I actually met my friend Nick, who is in Gatineau. His name is Brews. And we became really good friends. I think we went to Dominion City for their anniversary, actually. We went to the Beau's Oktoberfest shortly after. And then we went to Messerem at one point, and he said, hey, I'm thinking about going to Vermont, would you like to come? The weather looks great. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds fantastic. I've never been. He's like, oh, let me show you. So yeah, I think Hill Farmstead was the first real road trip brewery that we hit. And though I will have a tip for you is that you can always go probably about half an hour earlier than they open, and they will still let you in. So if you go early, then you don't have any line and you have the whole place to yourself. And that was really the thing that changed me, because I think I've went like maybe 3 times after that too. And if you go really early, there's not really a line at all. So yeah, so we went all through Vermont. We did there, we did Stowe, we did Alchemist, the traditional sort of ones. We did Burlington Beer Company, Foam. We went to like the Burlington, I think it's Burlington Beer House. What's it called? There's a beer place in
Vermont Pub and Grill.
No, it's in Winooski, actually. The Winooski Beverage House is what it's called.
Oh, Beverage Warehouse in Winooski, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. We went there, so that was pretty cool. And then after that, I was like, oh man, there's so many places that we didn't even get to go to. I need to go again. And I went again with a different friend, and we hit up a couple of other ones. And we went to Red Clover, and I met Andy, who's just an absolute gem. And he's very family-owned, small town. And then we did, what did we do? We did Maine. We went to Portland. Did like Bissell Brothers, the whole works. Like this Portland, Maine is pretty cool because there's so many places in such a small area that you can pretty much hit. The one area is the Allagash main house, so the huge Allagash tap room. But then you have like Definitive Brewing Company, Austin Street Brewing. You have there's like quite a few other ones in that area. Battery Steel, I think, is there too. So we did that, and then I went to Chicago for an academic conference. Did all the big names from Chicago as well, which Chicago would not recommend for a beer trip. I know Kaiser loves it. I watched his interview, and I was screaming at the TV saying, like, don't go to Chicago. It's the worst for a beer trip unless you have a car. Because I took the train, and everything is very far and kind of in sketchier neighborhoods, and it's not ideal.
I felt that way in. Between Brooklyn and Queens, it was like, okay, it's still daylight. Now we'll take the train. So.
Yeah, Queens is really something. Eh? And the most recent one we did, like I already mentioned, we went down through to, we did Treehouse, which was our only stop in Massachusetts. Went down through Connecticut. I met Eric and Melissa at 12% Beer Company, which houses, it's a co-op collective brewing space. And I met Alex, the owner, who runs in distribution, and Zach from Marlowe Ales, and Chris, who was overseeing the barrel program at Hill Farmstead. So we all just I got to meet a lot of people there, which was fantastic, with Fox Farm and up through, Hudson Valley, and Suarez was our last stop, and I adore Suarez. I would go there as soon as the border opens. That's it. That's the first place. I think that's one of your questions. That's the first place I'm going to, is Suarez.
Okay, and then outside North America, any plans?
I don't know. We'll see. Nothing in the near future. I really am not as versed with other areas, I guess. I know down in I think it's Brazil, they have quite a few, like South America sort of area, and even in like Europe, I guess, but it's not, I don't think it'd be my main priority, honestly. I think North America is scant for certain things, and so it's nice to just prioritize beer.
So what's next for yourself when it comes to beer Instagram? You've already mentioned Wood Brothers has had a huge expansion. So those who follow Wood Brothers, check out at Wood Brothers 2018 on Instagram when you have a chance. Wood Brothers Brewing on 2018?
Maybe it's Wood Brothers.
Wood Brothers Brewing 2018.
There we go.
Check them out. But as for yourself, for the growth of your Instagram, where do you feel that could go?
Yeah, so lately I've kind of taken a step back, which is funny because I was very heavily into it. So I think lately I'm kind of just letting it roll. I'm letting it flow naturally. So I don't force myself to take pictures. I think that it's very difficult, and I think a lot of people will say this too, in this time, because I center a lot of my work in being at the brewery. So I can only shoot so much, like Messerem and Wood Brothers, like maybe those two I can shoot at right now, but other than that, I can't really go to any other tap rooms, and it's very self-limiting for me. So I can sit on my terrace all I want and, pour a beer while I sit there, but I find that very dull and boring lately. So I think in the meantime, I'll probably just work on Wood Brothers, but in the future, I would love to do a couple more photography gigs. And perhaps when I do a trip down to the US again at 12% would be very nice. They have a massive space. So I think, I think possibly videography would be a nice way to go as well. Not so much an interview style. I'm definitely more of an artistic type. So I think it would be more cinematic, if anything, sort of just piecing those together. So perhaps that would be something that I would play with. But for now, I'm very comfortable with where I'm at. Like I mentioned before, I don't consider myself an influencer by any means. I'm just another person that likes to sit there and take pictures of their beer and look like an idiot sometimes. But it's all about meeting the people. So as long as I can meet people and take a couple pictures, that's all I really care about.
I'm kind of very surprised because you mentioned a lot of places, and we probably have run into each other. For all
Most
I know,
likely.
it's just we've been like, oh, you've been at the terrace at Masorum, where I've been inside because the terrace is too full. Who
Exactly.
knows? So,
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it just takes something like this, like a global pandemic that can really bring people together virtually, which is great. I mean, I hope that, I don't know how long we're going to be in this situation for, but I know that people were doing a lot of Instagram live videos for the first, maybe 2 weeks or something
mhm.
like that. And then they sort of just died. And that was something that I kind of thought was sad, is that people were so hung up on, oh, we need to connect and build our community, and then it just sort of stopped. So I think that even when the pandemic is over, that we should learn to connect in different ways, and especially at the brewery. And the one thing I would love to see is for the brewers to come out more to people and not stay in their little caves, as I call it, and kind of mingle more. Because I think now on the internet, I know brewers engage in a lot of, Quebec beer pages, and they like to comment and stuff like that. So it'd be really nice if they did that in real life and build connections, face to face, and really put people to the beer.
Yeah, see, that's like you mentioned, Troy. Troy's really good with that. I find when if he's not too busy, he'll come around and he'll talk to the people he knows. As well, Drew from Kanawaki Brewing, he is very sociable,
Mm-hmm.
and so when they're back up and running again, because I know they're completely shut down out in Kanawaki, but he's doing something great for the community. He's making hand sanitizer and donating it to the community. So even Troy is selling a Canadian-made sanitizer bottles as well. So, these guys are all sticking together, trying to stay local as best they can. I know somebody like myself and you are still trying to support these guys through their times when we can. To be financially realistic, we also have our own bills to pay, but support local before you go buy Molson or Alexander Keith or whoever else. So.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, I agree.
For sure. So I have no other questions for you at this time. Feel free to let the people know where they can find you.
You can find me solely on Instagram at pourinperspective. And like you mentioned, you can find Wood Brothers on Instagram at Wood Brothers Brewing 2018. And I think it's just Wood Brothers Brewing Co. on Facebook. And you can see us there.
Okay, so you got it all here. And once it's safe to go out again, definitely hit the tap room in Glen Robertson, Ontario, I believe.
Yes, Glen Roberts.
Yeah. Yes. Glen Robertson, not too far from Hawkesbury or Bose. So if you know Bose, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from there. Go check these guys out when it's safe to again. As for us, at All Beer Inside on all the social media, allbeerinside.com. On the right-hand side of the page, if you're doing any Amazon shopping, Jeff Bezos makes enough money. You can help support the show to buy equipment so I can do interviews like this in the future. By clicking on the Amazon link, it costs you nothing extra, and the show gets a little portion of what your purchase is, which is always helpful. As I like to say at the end of every episode, drink craft, not crap. Thank you very much.
Thank you.